Our final speaker this afternoon is Ellen Awe. Ellen has been involved in education since 1983 when she graduated with a degree in elementary and special education. In 2003, she finished a master's in curriculum and design. She has worked with learners from preschool to college age as a teacher or a behavioral or inclusion consultant, both in public and in private settings. She is currently teaching at Allison Traditional Magnet School as a special education English language arts teacher. She is an avid reader, gardener, writer, and pickleball player. Have you ever fallen down? Yeah, okay, good. I mean, there we are. Mm-hmm. And she loves spending time with her grandchildren and her 94-year-old mother. Let's welcome Ellen.
I hope I didn't survive pickleball just to fall off this green box. It was January 1, 2012, New Year's Day. It was the day I knew my father was going to die. But an experience that I thought was going to be about death and absence really became an experience of life and presence. My family had had the gift of time. I'm here with the unfortunate haircut. We had had the gift of time with my father. He'd been diagnosed with brain cancer, and about 14 months later, we knew that his life was coming to an end. But everyone had had time to come and say their farewells to my dad. Many friends came from far and near to say goodbye as well. My father was a light, a big presence, pastor, spiritual counselor, teacher, friend to many. Loving God and caring for humanity really was his life's work. But that last day, it was my mother and I only, sitting by his bedside, holding his hands as he slowly lost consciousness and began to work harder and harder to breathe. We held his hands, we told him how much that we loved him. And at one point, my mom pulled out the little prayer book that they often turn to and suggested we read the prayer at night. And we read that together, and the words of the prayer say, "May God grant you a peaceful night and a perfect end." And that's really what we wanted from my dad. We wanted this at the end of his very well-lived life. As my father's only daughter and youngest child, what I really wanted from my dad was to be as present to him in his death as he was to us in our lives. At one point, sitting by his bed, holding onto his hands, my father took in a very long breath, let out a very long and rattled breath, and then there was a space. And I startled, I wasn't prepared. I yelled out, "No, no, no, no." And my dad started to breathe again, but it was very laborious. I realized I wasn't prepared. I walked down to a small chapel that was in the facility where he was in hospice, and uncharacteristically, I opened wide my heart. I threw myself down on my knees, and I spoke to God saying, "You got to throw me a bone here. I have this beautiful and terrible responsibility to be here with my father when he dies, and I don't know how." After a few minutes, I walked back into the room, and things were very much as I had left them. My mother sitting by his bed, and my dad working very, very hard to breathe. And I saw a book just beyond my dad's bed, and I'd never noticed it before, but I picked it up and randomly opened it, and on the page were the very words that I needed. It said that sometimes a person can't die with the people they love sitting right there next to them. Sometimes people have to be let go. Death is ultimately a solo journey. So my mom and I talked about this and agreed we wanted to be there, but we wanted to let go. We wanted to give him space. And so my mom went and sat on the other side of the room in a recliner. I sat close to his bed, but I let go of him physically, and I maintained a very peaceful presence. And at one point, again, about an hour later, my dad breathed in, breathed out, and there was a silence. And this time I spoke into that space, and I said, "I love you, Dad. You can go. I love you. You can go." And he breathed in, and a long, long exhale, and that was his last breath. My mother quickly knew that he was gone. She woke, and she came and sat by his bed, and she held on to him until the warmth of his body was gone. I looked at my dad, and I saw a shell. His essence was gone, his spirit, his soul, his light, and I wondered where he'd gone. I believe in an afterlife, but there's a lot of mystery around it as well. A couple days before, I'd had a conversation with my dad, and I said, "Daddy, I think you're going to go to heaven soon." He said, "Yeah, I think I am too, but it's kind of a new experience for me." But it was, I felt his physical absence, but I also felt his presence very much, particularly in places that he once loved, paths he once walked on. I also felt this strong yearning in my soul that I really couldn't explain, to be in sacred places, and places that he'd loved, places that were small, places that were large. I felt myself becoming more contemplative, and I couldn't quite explain this change within me. And although I thought it was my dad being with me, it was a very different experience than I'd ever felt before. And I wondered, is it possible for a person's soul to take up residence within another person? Because I felt like that's what had happened. And I remember talking to my daughters about their grandpa. And I said, you know, a soul that big, a soul that vibrant, had to go somewhere. And I wonder if part of it's in heaven and part of it's within me. And I don't know, but I'm comfortable with the mystery. And I love knowing that as my dad once held me in his arms, so I may hold him now in my soul.